Hello, everyone. This is episode 8 of Skyline. I don't have to double check this time. I am certain it is episode 8. And today I'm joined by Will. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Hello. Will Ziem, the weird last name.
hmm
I guess a little bit about me. I am studying aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering, I guess, at Missouri S&T in Rolla, Missouri.
Mm.
Um, Most of my hobbies include rockets and more rockets, and even more rockets. But I do have some other stuff that I do on a regular basis.
Mhm.
Like I'm pretty into music. I play a few different instruments and spend a lot of time listening to music.
Yeah.
And yeah, play some video games occasionally. That I'm bad at all of them, but
Yeah, same here, honestly.
yeah,
Um, some of you may know him from the Total Recall review we did a little bit ago, as well as the first
yeah.
Fireside Skyline, and maybe more so the two Civ videos that have come out. Will has been in both. He is the one who made me very angry in the last one. Um,
Yep.
but no, I mean, uh, this is more just a random question of curiosity. I don't think I've ever asked before. Are you aware of a game called like I think it's the it's like a space it's a rocket building game. What is it
Kerbal
called?
Space Program.
Kerbal Space Program. Oh yeah, you've
Yeah,
played
that's
that,
that.
right?
That is yes. That's obligatory as an aerospace engineer. If you haven't gone to college aerospace engineering and not played that game, then you're not
You're
really trying hard enough. I think.
yeah, then you're not actually yeah, that makes sense. I have
Yeah.
myself not actually really played that. I feel like I played like an hour of it and went, not for
Yeah.
me.
I mean, I haven't played it in a while. Like it's been a while, and once again, I'm also very bad at the game.
Yeah.
Um, but it's I've played it before.
All right.
It's something that gets brought up regularly with at my friend group at school.
Well,
Um,
fair enough.
other people I know play it quite a lot.
I mean, that makes sense. Like you said, it's got to be kind of a rite of passage in a way. Like you got to play at
Yeah,
least a bit of this game.
yeah.
I
Eh,
think yeah, good.
I was gonna say it's always funny. For example, we have classes in orbital mechanics, and of course, that game always gets brought up, and the professor always just sighs in despair because it is a game first and foremost. It's not 100% correct, although it
Yeah,
is. I would say it's more well made than other like physics based games.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, there would reach a certain point where it would no longer be a game. It would be a simulation. It'd be
yeah.
like a yeah.
Kerbal Space Program actually toes that line, I think, in a lot of
hmm
ways. Like it is a game, yes, but also half the time people spend in it is just
hmm
messing around with the physics in it. So
Fair enough. I think a big question I'd like to ask because I'm sure I've asked this before, like knowing each other in person, but for the life of me, I can't remember. Like, what was like the path to you deciding aerospace engineering, propulsion, that kind of what was the path to you learning or deciding that was what you wanted to do?
um so I joined the robotics team in high school. Our
Yeah,
high school had a first tech challenge, first robotics
a lot of our
team.
friend group were in
Yeah,
robotics. In fact,
and I
yeah.
spent way too many hours in that lab working on
Mhm.
robots. I absolutely spent too much time there. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot of things from it. That
Yeah.
definitely put me on the field of I wanted to do engineering. At that point, I hadn't quite decided what. And then my senior year of high school it was like 2017.
Yeah.
I graduated in May, I think. I believe it was March of 2017 when SpaceX landed their first booster propulsively,
Mhm.
and that was just mind-blowingly awesome. And like that singular event, and there's a couple of other things that did it. I could point to a couple of movies that I've watched, books that I've read, a
Yeah.
couple of other companies that I was interested in, but that was probably the nail in the coffin, so to speak. That like I felt like I had no other choice. That aerospace engineering was just something that I felt not only I was super interested in, but something I could do well in and excel. So that was
Yeah.
sort of what put me there. I guess something else that was a big contributing factor to that is if you've seen the movie Interstellar.
I actually have not,
Okay,
and I
it's a
really need to.
2014 movie. It is a fantastic cast, fantastic soundtrack, fantastic storyline.
Hmm.
Just oh, I'd have to say it's my favorite movie of all time. Even to
Oh.
this day, 6 years later, it is just an outstanding movie, and it's very much a space movie. Um,
I mean, I've heard really good things about that movie. maybe we should. I mean, there's a lot of movies on the list to review. on,
Oh yeah, for sure.
but
I do have to say it's also a very long movie. Like it is pushing 3 hours.
yeah,
Um, it's a long
that's
movie, but
fair.
it's so good. I feel like 95% of it too is like entirely warranted. I don't think there's very much material in it that is boring or unnecessary. I think it's 3 hours of a really good movie overall.
Well, there you go. I mean, that I know I've been. I need to. There's a few movies like that I was old enough to see when it came out, and I just didn't see it. Which is a bummer. But yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so that makes sense because I mean I know back in our robotics days, like you were gonna do something in the STEM field, like that was more than
Right.
likely the
Mm.
case.
It's just a matter of what branch, because there's a lot of different branches of engineering that you can go into. There's a lot
Yeah,
of different ways to apply the same basic
mhm.
math and physics, so to speak. So
Yeah. This is actually an interest. I don't know if you'll be able to answer. I don't know, but like there's a certain kind of person that gets interested in engineering in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. Now, not trying to make huge generalizations here, but more so, I guess my curiosity is like, why do you think certain people get interested in certain specific kinds of engineering? Like for you, it was because you were like inspired and were like, oh, that's awesome when you saw that we've now built rockets that can land themselves via propulsion, coming back down and things such as that.
Mhm.
Do you think that's similar for other people that they just see an engineering feat and they go, I want to work on that?
I
What do
mean,
you think
yeah,
that
I
is?
think I think so. I think everyone has like similar to me some things that they can. I mean, maybe not everyone can point back to them specifically, but
Mhm.
I know everyone has some events or things that happen in their life that for engineers at least that make them choose one engineering discipline over another.
Yeah.
Um, for me, I'm one of the ones that was a bit indecisive. I couldn't decide on one, so I decided
Mhm.
on two. I'm both aerospace and mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
Which they're very similar in a lot of ways, to be honest. There's not a whole lot of difference other than just the focuses of like what type of problems you're solving junior and senior year in your classes. But
Yeah.
I mean, there's environmental engineering, there's petroleum engineering, there's civil and architectural engineering.
Mm.
It's all applying the same basic things. You're using math and physics to solve real world problems. Is what it comes down to, and
Yeah.
there's just different applications of that. So
For
some people
sure.
are more interested in buildings, architecture, logistics of moving things, moving people. Some people are more interested in chemistry and the environment, and they still want to use engineering applications for those subjects. And
Yeah.
yet some people just are super into cars and rockets and
Yeah.
other things that move really fast, and we like building them.
And maybe this just speaking as a liberal arts student, I feel like there is a thing, and maybe this is true of all disciplines, where you just think, oh, engineers, and you don't really consider like the vast diversity within engineering itself too.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it's compared to like other subjects, it's really not that diverse. I mean, it's once again, it's pretty much very similar.
mm,
I think just different applications of it.
okay,
So while there are different branches, like there's different aspects of engineering, I'd
they
say
all
all in
have the
all,
same
there's
core.
not. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, that does make sense. I was almost like going like, oh, maybe engineers, and you're like, I mean, yes, there are branches, but it's all pretty much the
Yeah.
same. Uh,
Yeah.
just different
I mean,
focuses.
in a similar way, like sort of turning it back to what you're interested in.
Hmm.
There's a lot of different ways you can take the study of people, how they act, how they work, why people
Yeah,
do the things they do. There's a lot of different ways you can take that. I know you've yourself have tried a couple different of those over the course of your
yeah,
college career. You switched majors a couple of times.
and I think similar to engineering, there is a, and to be fair, I only have a bachelor's, so I, or I don't even have it yet. I don't even have it
You're
yet.
close. You're really close
Close,
to it
yeah,
though.
but like there is a maybe a bit more. I think there's more of a diversity of thought in like the process of how you handle each of the branches of psychology than
Hmm.
engineering. But I think similar to engineering, I mean, it's all psychology at the end of the day. It's all sort of that base, what we're looking at, the research methods we use. The
Hmm.
only difference is that, a social psych person is going to look at a specific situation much differently than a cog psych person might. Um, and they'll probably both be right to some degree, but they're just looking at it slightly differently.
And they may also be wrong to some degree as well. And
I
it's
mean, yeah.
I guess you can speak to that more than I can, but I'm sure in every aspect there's some ways in which someone's right and some aspects in which
Mhm.
someone's wrong.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think that's true of most things, actually.
Fair.
Other than, I guess, things that we've really kind of, through thousands of experiments, kind of
Mhm.
gone down packed. And even then, there could be something new we learn that refines it even more, like
Mhm.
smooths it out a bit. Like, oh, okay, smooth that out, But that's the process, I suppose, of research and all of that, trying to round out all the edges,
Yep.
figure out what's up. Um, but yeah, I mean, I know you and me have had probably the most, I guess, orthodox college experience out of our sort of hometown friends. Um, because
Possibly, yeah.
yeah, because I know, because like Andrew, well, Andrew maybe had a bit of an orthodox path to some, like he did
Yeah.
associates college and now is off to the Air Force, but
Yeah.
you know, Josh switched majors partway through. I think John did the same because he's not graduating till about another year or so, right?
Oh, really? I thought he was graduating in May with you.
Oh shoot,
Like
you
I
might
knew
be
I knew
right.
he switched. I thought it was like the first 1 or 2 semesters though, so it didn't change anything.
I can ask him today when we play Civ.
Okay.
But the point being, like, I guess we both knew a bit better, quicker what we wanted
Mhm.
to do.
Yeah, I mean that's
Um,
not to say neither of us changed majors. I mean we both changed majors once or
yeah.
twice in our college career. It's just that for us at least it was either a very similar field so it didn't change
Hmm.
much, or it was early on enough that it didn't matter much. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily more or less common. Even I think most people change their major at some point in their college career.
Yeah.
It's rare I think to see them change junior year of college.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, in Josh's example, for instance, he switched after 2 full years, and
Yeah.
I definitely admire him for that choice because that's
Yeah.
not an easy decision to make, having gone through all of that those classes and
Hmm.
giving up all those resources to do that, and then changing majors. I
No,
mean,
I think it's awesome too because, like you said, like it's a lot of resources you're then putting in, but it's what he wants to do. And I think that's
yeah,
what's important.
yeah,
Um, but it is kind of crazy that we think like people there's certain level of expectation we put on people graduating high school to have a good idea or at least somewhat of an
mhm,
idea of what they want to do.
yeah. That's something that like for my little sister Chloe, like she's a junior in high school and she doesn't really have a clue yet what she wants to do, and that's something that we've been trying to words. All the words in my mind just stopped. Um,
You're trying to help her understand that she doesn't have to know right now, or
yeah, and we're sort of trying to get her like, yes, she needs to start looking at colleges. She probably is going to go to a 4 year university.
Mhm.
That at least that she is pretty much mostly decided.
Yeah.
But as to what she wants to study, she doesn't know yet, and so we're sort of trying to get her to understand that she doesn't have to know right now. It's good to have an idea,
Hmm.
like roughly, but she's probably going to change that when she gets to college once or twice.
Yeah,
So
and depending on
and
the
that's
college, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that's just not the end of the world
Yeah.
to change majors, in college. So go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and like, depending on the college you go to, you can have even more flexibility in figuring that out. Because like, I went to a
Right.
liberal arts college, where they don't even have you declare your major till like the end of your sophomore year,
Hmm.
um, which is pretty insane to a lot of other college standards. But um, I think depending on the college you go to, they really some colleges are like decide like when you show up,
Hmm.
and other colleges are like, okay, we recognize you're gonna need some time to figure this out. Take some classes you're interested in and figure this out.
Right. And I mean,
Um,
to some extent, you do have to have somewhat of an idea, like
yeah.
engineering versus hard science
Hmm.
versus, human studies.
While you're
Or
trying to figure out your major, you really shouldn't be taking classes in every single possible discipline.
right. I think you should have by freshman year of college, you should have some idea because
A
even though
ballpark.
in many colleges you don't really decide on a major. I mean,
Hmm.
for Rolla, I think you had to go through about half a dozen classes.
Yeah.
And there was a certain requirements list before you decide on a major. But once again, 90% of Rolla is engineering. So that's even a bit different story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to have an idea because those different disciplines have different
Mhm.
backgrounds, have different general classes they have to
Yeah.
take. Um,
And if you have a good ballpark, pretty much no matter what class you take in that ballpark, they will feed into each other pretty well.
right. Mm-hmm.
Like I knew from the get go that I'd be doing some sort of social science more than likely.
Mm-hmm.
Be it, I guess philosophy is technically social. I have no idea, honestly, the distinctions between them, honestly. But like
Mm-hmm.
I knew it would be something sort of in the ballpark of psych, anthropology. Education was what I originally wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, you figure that stuff out and by taking all those sort of classes. But I'm glad you're helping little sister be like, nah, you don't have to worry about that because it's true, you don't. Um,
Yep.
yeah, no, it's fine.
I just made Mason some scrambled eggs. I'd be glad to whip some up and bring them back here to you if you'd like.
I will certainly take some scrambled eggs.
Okay.
All right. This is the scrambled eggs episode of of Skyline. Getting some scrambled eggs.
Headline be college and some scrambled eggs.
Yes, college and some scrambled eggs. But no, I mean, it's really been interesting college, I think. And I think what's been really interesting for us, and I don't know if how, like, I've said this before, but I've been really I've been pleasantly surprised and grateful that our group of friends, who went through robotics and like sort of had all these connections. Band is another good example of how we knew each other.
Mm-hmm.
You had said, it's amazing that we still hang out and we still
Yeah.
do things because not every high school group can say that.
Right, and I definitely hope that it doesn't change anytime soon. I mean,
Oh,
obviously, we're all going to start moving on to different like stages of life.
For sure.
There's, I honestly do. There's a few of you, Matt, or you Andrew, Josh, one or two others. I consider you guys brothers, and so,
Yeah. No,
you're basically family to me, and I hope that we keep in touch long after college has done for all of us.
I agree. I mean, last episode with Andrew, we talked about that we pretty much view each other as family at this point.
Yeah.
And in that vein, like, I think there's a level of recognition, especially as you get older. What I've realized is like, and I feel we've talked. I don't know if I've talked to you about this though. Like, there's this element of when you're younger, like you live in the same neighborhood or you go to the same school, you see each other every day.
Mm.
Part of getting older is that nature, that relationship changes, where it's like, okay, I'm not gonna see you every day. That's just not gonna happen. I have a job. I live like
Right.
hours away. That's just not going to happen. But what you do then is you try to make time in your week, or if you can't, that you just try to make time to catch up and say hi or play a game, or
Right.
and that's sort of what it becomes.
Right, and that's partially just life. Life changes, but also sort of the social structure, I guess, of like school is sort of partially designed for you to be around a group of people and sort of become friends with them over the course of a few years. And then, after that, life just becomes a matter of, it's a lot more effort to keep friends,
Yes.
that you aren't specifically working with or going to church with or something. But it does, if you're able to keep those relationships, then I think it's also more rewarding. If you are willing to put the effort into it to keep them.
For sure. And I mean, just the other day, like yesterday, I called up my freshman year RA. Because I send Christmas messages every Christmas. I had sent him one, and we were like, we should catch up. And it was really nice and rewarding. And sometimes you forget that, like, hey, like, even if you're not going to see them every day, then on, sometimes it's nice to just, like, call up an old friend, check up on them, see how they're doing. There's something rewarding about that. And I think with our group of friends, we'll be on Discord on weekends, or we'll be doing stuff together. Part of this channel is an excuse and a tool for me to use to make that a reality. Which is fun. Which, speaking of, I need to start scheduling out stuff for this again, because I've definitely been nailing down the uploads for Fresh Air and this. But I want to start getting some reviews out. I need to finish video. It's this whole thing. But off to you, though. You have been, as you said earlier, big part of a rocket club on your
Yeah.
campus. And
Mhm.
this ain't like bottle rockets. This is the real deal. Or
Yeah,
uh,
basically.
basically the real deal.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's definitely not orbital launch vehicles. That's
Yeah.
a whole class of engineering feat that I quite honestly don't even fully understand how one goes about designing an orbital class rocket.
Yeah.
I think there is some scaling to what we do at my school, but I mean to tell a little bit about it. So,
Yeah.
my design team, we build rockets, um, but the scale of rockets that we build, I mean, generally our rockets are between 10 and 15 feet tall,
Yeah.
um, have a diameter
Whew.
between somewhere between 4 and 6 inches. Um, we regularly hit altitudes between 8,000 and 15,000 feet. Um, so that's 2 to 3 miles up
Yeah,
into the
that's a
sky.
lot.
That's the type of thing that we do. And this year, I'm serving as chief engineer for one of the projects.
Oh,
So
I didn't
I'm
even realize that.
basically have the what do you call it? Not in charge per se, but
Responsibility?
I'm doing a lot of the management and
Gotcha.
logistics handling of building a rocket.
Yeah.
And this rocket that we're building this year is a bit different than previous years. It's designed to go a lot higher. We're hoping to
Mm.
hit about 6 miles, an altitude about 30,000 feet.
That's like 3 times what the number you said before. Because usually you said you go about 2 to 3.
Yeah,
Wow, that's big.
yeah, it's a very ambitious project. The pandemic really hasn't helped.
Yeah.
Not quite certain whether it's going to go through as I originally hoped, but we're still, as of right now, we're still trying for it. We still
Gotcha.
think we can get there. And one of the biggest challenges is the propulsion system.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to have enough energy in the motor to lift a vehicle of that weight. Which this
Yeah.
rocket's actually really light compared to the last few rockets we built. It's only about 75 pounds.
Oh.
We regularly launch rockets between 100 and 130 pounds, though,
Mhm.
up into 2 miles up. So
That's wild. What,
Mhm.
if you don't mind me asking, and you probably don't, but like, what's it? It's gotta be an amazing, because I know back in high school robotics, which is not at all comparable in most ways to what you're doing, but the feeling of seeing your robot moving and doing the task it's supposed to do was so rewarding. I can't imagine what seeing a literal rocket that you
Honestly, I
participate
feel
make
like
go
it
up in the
is
air.
so much more rewarding in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways, it's so much more. I think it's easier, like mentally, in a lot of ways, because
Mhm.
the robot, you are almost certain that at some point within the game, within it performing its task, it's going to break down. You're going to have literally zero time to go fix it, get it
Yeah.
operational again, and get it back on the field. Rocketry, it's not like that. With rocketry, you do all the engineering, all the math, all of the testing beforehand,
Mhm.
and once you hit that button and the motor ignites, there's nothing you can do. You sit back and watch, and it's either does what it does or it doesn't,
Mhm.
and there's no really fixing it. It either works or it doesn't. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't work, it's going to come down in pieces. And if it does work, it's going to come down in one piece, hopefully. So, in that way, it's a lot easier that like when the time comes for the performance, there's not as much. I mean, there is a lot more on the line. I think it's the entire vehicle either works or it doesn't. But at the same time, you don't have the stress of having to actively fix it. After it's performed and perform it again. Now, of course, there are things that come up. Things that once we're assembling the rocket, at the launch pad,
Yeah.
things come up that we have to fix and modify and such. But that's, I think, rarer, and in general simpler, than stuff that we did in high school.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me because especially the stress of like having a bunch of people in your ear, being upset that the robot did, broke as it always does. Like you reach a certain point where you're like, why are you surprised? Why are you upset?
Yeah.
This
Oh, trust me,
happens.
we've had some people at my rocket team still like. Sometimes the people who would go to launch for the first time, they don't
Yeah.
really understand the fact that everything can and does go wrong. And so some of them just start getting so mad about things not working out, or they start
Mhm.
blaming someone else for not doing the design properly, and they just gotta learn trial by fire that
Yeah.
it's rocket science. It's one
In
of the
that
hardest
way,
things
yeah.
humanity has ever done. And we're doing it as college students.
Mhm.
You have to expect things to go
Yeah,
wrong.
and in that way, robotics probably helped you be prepared for that. That
Yeah.
failure
Mhm.
isn't like the end of the world.
Right.
It's almost an expected reality.
Yeah.
That
And
that sounds
I guess
gonna go
talk
well.
a little bit more about how the team is structured. So like we
Yeah, go
have
for it.
um so it's all student run and led. Like we do have some supervision
Hmm.
by professors on campus, mostly for safety reasons because rocket science is dangerous.
Yeah.
But by and large, all the design, all of the buying, manufacturing, assembly, testing, it's all done by students.
Wow.
And so, we have our chief officers on the team that are students that sort of run the management of the team as a whole. So we have a bunch of different projects, a bunch of different programs that the team facilitates. And then as chief engineer, I'm basically head of one of those projects.
Mm.
And so I've honestly really enjoyed the role in a lot of different ways. Like does give you a management role, so like it is a lot of
Yeah.
people working, like working out problems with people and sort of making sure that each of these under the chief engineer is a bunch of groups of people that work on different parts of the rocket. So you have
Yeah.
one group that does the propulsion system, one group that does the airframe, the body of the rocket, one group that does the payload.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of making sure that each of those groups have what they need to succeed and that they're all working together properly. Um, and
Yeah.
it's for in one way, once again, a lot of working with people, a lot of logistics and financial management. But at the same time, it's a lot of holistic systems engineering.
Mm.
And so what that means, instead of looking at individual components, looking at individual like tests and successes and failures, and looking at the whole vehicle
Yeah.
and trying to make sure that each of the subgroups, work together properly. Each of the subsystems are
Mhm.
designed so that they will be facilitated by the other subsystems. And so I do help a little bit with some of the like the nitty gritty design with some subgroups.
Yeah.
Mostly this year, just because we have a lack of manpower. Pandemic sort of hit us hard, and we just don't have as many people as we used to.
For sure.
So as an experienced member, I have to do a lot more. But at the same time, it's a bit more holistic, system perspective, and
Yeah.
it's sort of what's driving me at this point. I'm most likely going to go to grad school for systems engineering.
Okay.
I think.
Oh, so you think you're set on going to grad school right after you graduate bachelor's at this point?
That's it's starting to look more and more like a not a for sure thing, of course, but it's something that I'm going to strive for. I think.
Okay. I mean, rock on. Grad school is great. I've been
Yeah.
when I was still thinking about doing education, um, one of my professors would jokingly, but not actually jokingly, always be like, "You're going to grad school." Like, there's no question you're going to grad school, which is
Yeah,
really
I mean, it's sort of like that in some aspects of engineering too. Like, if
Mm.
you can do a lot of things in aerospace with a bachelor's, but if you really want to,
Mhm.
be in charge of any projects or get into, the really higher level technical stuff, or
Yeah.
sometimes the more secure stuff that you have to have high security clearances for, you sort of have to have a master's. And
Gotcha.
you have to have that level of expertise that companies or entities will want you to work on their projects.
Well, that's
And
actually yeah.
what systems engineering is, it's quite a bit different from aerospace or mechanical. It's sort of
Mm.
it's not pertinent to one particular branch of engineering. It's sort of instead of engineering, specific pieces or specific things, you're
Yeah.
engineering systems, or sometimes you're engineering, the design process. Even like you're engineering how other people engineer things. And it's very meta in that way, but it's really
Yeah.
really interesting looking at how to design like a project to succeed. And so that's the type of thing that I think I'd like to go into once I've sort of figured out this whole aerospace thing.
That makes sense. Once I figured out aerospace.
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, that's awesome. Wow. I'm just more than happy that I'm just more than happy. I'm just more happy that you and like you said, it's not for sure, but I mean, just from the way you're saying it, sounds like it's a good idea.
Yeah,
Something
I'm
you'd like
actually
to
going to
do.
be talking. There's a professor at my college that I talked to once last semester that his research really interested me. So I'm going to be talking to him this
Okay.
semester about maybe even starting some research next semester. Or I'll probably be emailing professors from a couple of other schools as well, but really starting to nail down if this whole grad school thing is going to be feasible for me.
Okay. I mean, shoot. I mean, I know I might be biased, but I think you and graduate school would work well together.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, I mean, you'd be a busy man probably. I think it depends on the grad school, but I think
Yeah,
if you're
for
doing
sure.
engineering STEM stuff, I imagine it'll be a lot of work. Um,
Yeah, but I don't think it'll be much more work than I'm already doing.
for sure.
My college experience the last semester and this semester is already just 80 to 90 hours of work a week. Why
And
not
from,
add a little
yeah,
more?
and from what I've been told too, like similar to how I view junior and senior year of, you know, I guess this would be undergraduate school. Um,
Hmm.
like graduate school in the same vein as those 2 years, you're almost always doing something you at least have a passing interest in. At the very least, you
Well,
are
yeah, I certainly
keeping.
hope so.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
if
yeah.
you're in grad school for something that you're not interested in, then you're in the wrong place, just flat out.
Exactly. Yeah. Which, in that way, grad school does sound appealing because you're just like in it, in the thing you enjoy,
Hmm.
and that does sound really appealing. Um, because like for example, I have a friend, Liam, who graduated a bit ago, who's in grad school for creative writing, specifically poetry. So he literally just like, all right, go to the beach and write a poem, like, and that sounds great. Um, things like that. And that's not to say that super easy or super laid back, because I mean, creative writing is a difficult, like to make it good. Ooh.
Hmm.
Like, ooh, that's a lot of reading.
Yeah.
There's
Hmm.
always in all disciplines. You have to do a lot of reading, a lot of practice, and it's a strenuous
Yep.
thing.
It takes time to build up a skill like that.
Yeah, but man, yeah, because grad school, I'm times of like, I just want to go off to real life, but then I think, oh, but to do like research, like to go to grad school and really like metaphorically open someone's head
Yeah.
and look inside. Um, what a time that would be. And maybe, there's always the path of like doing grad school a few years after,
Yeah,
whatever.
grad school is never, not an option. Like you can
Yeah.
always, go and work someplace for a while and go back to grad school. It just
Mm,
that was my plan originally, but I've heard a lot of people say it's much more difficult to do that than to just go to grad school immediately.
for sure.
Mostly because at the time of senior year of college, you're still completely in the mode of a student.
Yeah,
You're in the mode of just absorbing a ridiculous amount of information at once, and when you go into the workforce, it's not always quite the same thing.
for sure.
You're generally working on one or two, tasks
Mhm.
that are generally related to your major, not always.
Hopefully, yeah.
Um, and it becomes a very much a different lifestyle of working 40 hours a week and then going home in the evenings and doing hobbies or doing nothing versus
Yeah.
at school where you are always at school.
Yeah,
It's a big difference in lifestyle.
for sure, for sure. I mean, speaking of the latter, what you were talking about, which is hobbies, right? You
Yeah.
were talking about and this might be sort of jumping horse, but like our lives are not only the things we're studying or
Oh yeah, that's fair.
looking into, but I guess to sort of jump horse to another thing that I know you have interest in, and uh, we've been involved in, which is like the hobbies of like music.
Hmm.
You really enjoy that hobby, and is that something you think you'll probably pursue, even well into the future, right? Like music.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would like to, but that's something that's really hard to pursue when you're not, like actively in a high school or college that you have access to a bunch of
Yeah.
different groups. I mean, like so like I mentioned before, I play a couple different instruments. Usually trombone and tuba
Yeah.
are the type of things that like tuba and bass trombone specifically the type of things that I play most at this point.
Mhm.
And that's something that I would definitely like to, if I end up in a place where there's a university that has like
Yeah.
a symphony orchestra that's open to the public. I mean, yeah, I would totally join that if I could.
Mhm.
Um, it's not usually a whole lot of like extra work to join.
Yeah.
At least the orchestra that I've been a part of since in college is it's a 2 to 3 hours a week in practice, or in ensemble practice, and then maybe a couple of hours a week extra you spend practicing on your own.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge time commitment. Even if you had a full-time job, depending on what your situation is, I feel like that would be something that time-wise would be pretty easy to do. So I hope
I
in the
agree.
future I can continue that, but I don't know for sure
Yeah,
whether
because
I'll be
like
able to or not.
there are just ensembles out there. Like I know Galesburg
Yeah.
has one
Hmm.
that goes to Knox or whatever to do that, and so that's just a thing you can do. Um, I know, we did high school marching band, which is not the cream of the crop necessarily of. And I don't know. Would you say that because there was jazz band? Was that cream of the crop, or do you think that was still high school level?
I mean, high school our jazz band was not the best.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
I think it was all right. Better than a marching band,
Yeah, for
maybe.
sure.
Probably depending on the year for sure. I feel
Yeah.
like earlier on in our high school, the upperclassmen cared a lot more than we did as upperclassmen. If you sort of get my
Wow. Uh, Way to throw us under the bus.
Yep, yep.
But
You're welcome.
that might be the case. I feel like we had a lot more of people who definitely wanted to do music post high school.
Yeah, I guess we did have
upperclassmen.
quite a few musicians in our class, didn't we? Or at
Yeah.
least, not all of them started as
Mm.
going toward music, but some of them
Well,
ended up in that direction
we
afterwards.
we
Yeah.
had a few. I guess I was more talking about the upperclassmen before us. I feel like had a lot, didn't they? I don't know.
Really?
Like the people who you were saying might have cared a bit more.
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. But I mean, I know a few people that were like, I'm gonna major into music, which like
Okay.
that's an accomplishment, I guess.
Yeah, it is.
If your band can inspire people to do that, even a few, I mean,
Yeah.
that's an accomplishment, I suppose.
Yeah, that's fair.
But so to make things clear, I played trombone. I did not play it exceptionally well. And I haven't practiced trombone in a hot second. I've more so been practicing guitar than anything else in recent time. But
Yeah, I'm sort of nervous for next semester because the symphony orchestra is going to be happening once again next semester. It hasn't happened this semester, and it didn't happen for half of last semester.
yeah, because of COVID.
And I really haven't, I haven't played tuba since last March.
Wow.
And so I'm sort of nervous that I'll come back in January and I may have to put in a lot of extra work just to get up to the level that I was at because I have not played in over 6 months.
Even just to work your lips back into gear.
Yeah.
Like
It's very much a muscle thing. If you
Mhm.
you don't practice it on a regular basis, then you do start to lose it.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, I remember when I first started to practice the trombone again. I'm sure I'll have this again. Oof, it was hard. Like your lips would just hurt. And I think even with guitar, because I also haven't practiced guitar in a hot second. I've practiced guitar a lot more recently than trombone, but like my fingers are gonna hurt the first few times I jump back into it.
Oh yeah, until you build up the calluses again on your fingertips. Yep. Yeah,
which I had for a while because I was practicing every day. But yeah. But now that I'm back home, theoretically I have more time to practice those things. I've just been in Christmas break mode of like I'm just gonna play games. Do nothing.
Now, are you going back up to Knox after the first when classes start up again, or is it? I mean, I'm assuming it's still going to be all online for you.
So the first half of this winter term is completely online, so I'll be staying home.
Okay.
And then the second half will come back to campus.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, an interesting choice, but I think perhaps a wise one. They're just wanting to, because winter. Again, we have a vaccine now, which, knock on wood, that really gets out there quicker. As more vaccines get made, I'm really hoping that it just gets out there. But they were knowing that the experts were saying during winter was going to get pretty bad, which, for all intents and purposes, it has.
Yeah.
And they were like, "All right, so we won't have everyone return to campus right after all this bad stuff. We'll give it some time."
Right. Yeah, it definitely peaked. I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was sort of like the height of the second wave.
Yeah, it was like December 11th was the most new cases in one.
Yeah, but now that the vaccine's starting, holidays are sort of winding down. I think that will start to go down.
I think we're going to see another wave here in 1 or 2 days just because that'll be when people who did go out for Christmas sort of show symptoms and all that. But yeah, I think after the holidays are all sort of said and done, we'll be... Yeah, I mean, December... What? I thought December 11th was the highest it had been. Is COVID a hoax? I'm kidding.
It always has.
Oh, that's Illinois, not all of the United States.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, so I think by definitely by May or June, we'll start seeing. Oh my.
Oh, did something?
You okay there, Matt?
I am okay.
Okay. There's a lot of really loud noise that happened all at once.
Oh, hopefully that doesn't come out of the recording. But yeah, okay. I agree. I think by the time summer comes around, we'll be quote unquote on the other side. I think we'll still see COVID pop up.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's
but
not going to be gone by May or June, very
yeah.
much so. But I think by that point we'll have some portion of the populace will be vaccinated.
Mhm,
Some portion of the populace will just be immune after already having it,
mhm,
and so
yeah.
I think it'll
Yeah.
probably be this time next year before we're really starting to get back to normal, though.
Like truly, truly, like where
Yeah.
COVID's
Hmm.
only a memory.
I
um,
mean, it'll probably end up being sort of like the flu thing. I don't know if it'll really ever actually go
well,
away completely, but
unlike the flu, the efficacy of these vaccines is supposed to be really high. So it's possible that, from my understanding, I'm by no means an expert. It's may go way of like polio, or where it's just
I've
sort of
also heard
gone.
that the amount of time that the vaccine works is less. Like it's only like 6 months,
Oh,
I
like
think.
we'll have to take it again and again.
Or like I don't know. That's just sort of me speaking
Yeah,
off the top of
what
my
you've
head.
heard, yeah.
I have no
I mean,
idea. I'm
in
not
that way, it
pretend
could be very
to.
similar to the flu, where they go get your COVID shots this year,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm. Right.
Which whatever. Like, I'm not one of those people that's concerned too much about that, about like getting pumped up with this, because vaccines are like, unlike I guess antibiotics, which again I'm not an expert in these things. Unlike those, where antibiotics they kind of fight whatever the disease is for you, from my
Hmm.
understanding. But with vaccines, it's literally like a training program. You take your body
Yeah.
to the gym,
Hmm. Yep.
and they work out.
Teaches your body how to fight the virus itself.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a bit better in a way for your body than, because antibiotics are good. Don't get me wrong, but you run into the problem where if you take a lot of them all the
Hmm.
time, your immune system starts to. And I could be wrong. It's just what I've heard. It's why I don't take antibiotics every single time I'm sick. Only when I'm really, really sick.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I think this vaccine was produced in a matter of 9 months rather than 5 years, which was like the last couple major vaccines.
yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily because they cut a lot of corners. I mean, maybe they did a little bit,
Mhm.
but from every major medical personnel I've heard, it is safe and good to take, and I'll
Yeah.
certainly be taking it.
Yeah. And it's
I,
just
I
yeah.
think the biggest things that made a difference in this vaccine were the or from I was actually listening to this on the news earlier today is that instead of doing one thing after another for this vaccine, they sort of did a lot of things at once. They sort of had the medical community and the companies working on it and the
Yeah.
government all working together. And between those three, you basically have unlimited personnel, unlimited resources, and unlimited facilities.
You have
So
so
between
many
those three, yeah,
smart people, researchers, workers, all pulling their labor together to create something quick.
right.
Which is really
And
fantastic.
hopefully that will mean faster vaccines in the future, even.
Oh yeah.
That in the future maybe we'll see the time go down to 4 or 5 months before everyone gets the vaccine and we just go back to normal.
Which honestly, knowing humanity, that might be the better choice, because I mean, at the very least, United States with our rugged individualism, you know, as I was talking to my friend the other day, like how in Japan it's like everyone wears it, because he's in Japan right now teaching
Hmm.
English.
Hmm.
Um, it's like everyone wears a mask, and like there's no, and then he'll have students ask him, why do people in America not wear masks, or this or that, and he's like, it's hard to explain. um,
Oh my
but
god.
but in a way, I think having a process where we just make vaccines really quick will be more beneficial for sort of at least our American culture, because we can say, hey, please wear masks, and know that a lot of people won't. And then, but also be confident in knowing that in just a few months we'll have a vaccine and things will be better than they were this last time. Um,
Yeah.
which, I mean, speaking of like experts, like to be a, what is it called? An immunologist, or what is it called? People who study this stuff.
Um.
Study of disease, I guess would be.
Yeah.
Study of disease. What is that? Epidemiology. To be that must be a great.
Epidemiology.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
must be a great time right now. In the similar sense of like being a aerospace engineer with all these new fangled rockets coming out, with all these new rocket companies and the brilliant people working on those, the
Yeah.
engineers themselves and stuff. Like, it's a good time to be an
I mean,
epidemiologist.
yeah, there's a lot more happening for sure, but
Yeah.
once again, I think population will always continue to increase as well. So, and maybe not at the same rates, but I think to some extent, there'll always be sometimes love shortages of one thing and too much of another. But overall, yeah,
Fair enough.
you're probably right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, if if all of a sudden, like, for example, if like I don't know, if all of a sudden this is not at all comparable because this is more fantasy than anything. Like, if all of a sudden people had the ability to move things with their mind, like that just happened, to be a psychologist, man, or to be a neurologist, what a time it would be. You'd
That
be
would certainly
like,
be interesting. Yeah.
yeah, it would just all of a sudden be like, oh, it's fun to be my occupation. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I don't know how we got onto this. I guess we ended
I
up
don't
talking about
know.
COVID.
Overall, I really hope that what one of the lasting effects of COVID is that it really changes some of our infrastructure, how we go about things,
Yeah,
to better prepare for ones in the future. However, knowing America, it's probably not going to happen.
yeah. I mean, we can hope, and we
Well,
can, as the new generation, we can try to work to make that happen. I suppose.
yeah.
As the old die. um, but you know, shoot, I had a thought, and then it left me. Oh well, these things happen. The how we got on this conversation was we were talking about music, and we were talking about how COVID had canceled a lot of your orchestra stuff, and then we just ended up talking
Mhm.
about COVID. So to reel it back, yes, COVID's bad. Hopefully, we're on the other side of it here soon. Um, I would prefer sooner than later. I think everyone would. I don't think there's a lot of people going, you know what, I want COVID to last a good while longer. Um, but yeah, I mean, your hobbies of music definitely fallen to the wayside because of COVID. Like you said, I haven't played tuba in a long time.
Mhm.
But I find it interesting that, like, to some, right, their job, and this might be a weird thing to talk about, but it might be pertinent for us because, I mean, you're going to graduate school, but nonetheless, like, there's this idea of like your job isn't always the most entertaining thing, and so we flee to our hobbies to like give us meaning. Like a lot of people have jobs that they just do not like.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with a couple of friends from mine from Rolla, and
Mhm.
like I really don't like, I chose this field because I thoroughly enjoy it, more
Yeah.
than obviously any other pastime. Otherwise, I would have chosen that as my major, or my study in college. I really think I will, that will be something I enjoy. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it won't, maybe it'll change, but as of right now, I see it being,
Hmm.
the thing I enjoy most, and that I'll have other, smaller hobbies, things that I also enjoy,
Yeah.
but that I'm maybe not good enough to make a living with, or maybe I
Mhm.
don't enjoy enough to do 40 or 50 hours a
For
week
sure.
with.
And I mean, like, psychologically speaking, once something does become a job, it you do lose some I guess what's the term? Like, you lose some pleasure from it, but
Hmm.
that's arbitrary when you consider, like, okay, I'm going to lose some pleasure doing this thing I love for a job. Okay. But on another note, if I do something I really don't like, I'm really going to not enjoy it,
Yeah, yeah, for
That's
sure.
really all that means. I think if you're doing something for a job, there's less pleasure in it and more work in it. And that's just sort of how it ends up. But it's
Yeah,
better, I
could be.
think, to start off from that point of, like, just statistically, that is sort of how it is. But nonetheless, I think it's better to start off at a place of, I enjoy doing this than
Hmm.
start off at a place of, I don't like doing this. Because
Right.
you'll
Yeah,
still come out with a net
that.
positive,
Hmm.
you know? And I'm, like I said earlier, I'm confident you'll really enjoy doing what you've set out to do. And I think you'll be good with graduate school too.
Yeah, I
Um,
hope so.
yeah. But like it's interesting, like, because again, it's really wonderful that we're all still friends, and it's interesting to have known you from like about midway through high school, I'd say. I'm trying to remember exactly when, but
I mean, we all met freshman year of high school, but
yeah.
we all either didn't like each other or didn't hang out much until like sophomore year, and
Yeah,
we really started to become friends.
yeah, exactly. I honestly don't remember much of the point before we were friends, but um like it's interesting to watch all of us find that thing that we're interested in or we're gonna do.
Hmm.
Like, and looking back, like, if we were, like, let's say juniors in high school, so even before we were thinking about college, and we asked each other, what do we want to do? I feel like, I don't know who would have been the closest to being accurate about what they wanted to do. because like I would have said like education or something, and that's not what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I probably would have said engineering.
Yeah, which I think you would have been the closest.
It probably wouldn't have been aerospace. Wouldn't
Mhm.
have been my first choice back junior year of high school, but it would have been engineering field for sure.
For sure. But nonetheless, like I don't know, I can be a bit of a sentimental person. So it's sort of like looking back and being like, wow, like Will is a rocket scientist. Like all the memes about it, well, all the memes of it's just rocket science, or what's the meme? It's like
It's not rocket science.
except for you it is.
Yeah. No, trust me. That I have a week does not go by at college where you don't hear that joke.
You're
Or
working on
other
the
similar
rocket and
jokes.
someone goes, "Hey, it's not rocket science." Wait, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've talked about this, but a very similar thing to that is like in improv, people just say, "Just improvise," and it's like, okay, we get it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
We get it. Um, but no, I guess what is interesting, or maybe not. Maybe it's not interesting, but it's just I feel fortunate to have gotten to see all of our friends kind of figuring out what they want to do, and there's still more time in figuring this out, right? Like
Yeah, of course.
we still have to figure out jobs and careers, and I hope to be able
Yeah.
to see that too. But
Mhm.
there's something really inspiring and comforting to look left and right and see other people you grew up with also working to achieve some sort of end goal, some sort of
Yeah. And that's not to say that, what we're all set to do now might not change in 10 to
yeah,
15 years. I'm sure like the jobs the careers we'll end up with is not necessarily the jobs that we think we want right now.
for sure. And speaking of that, I think we'll approach the end, and by approach I mean like 10+ minutes maybe, and then we'll approach the end perhaps. But this might be more of a fun question, and I don't know if you have the answer to it, but like let's say in a hypothetical, what would be like your dream rocket to create? Um, like how high would it go? Um, how light would it be? What would it do? Would it land back on Earth? Like, what would be your dream rocket to participate in making?
That would definitely be Starship, which is a rocket that SpaceX is currently developing.
Yeah.
It's in a number of ways, it is very different than any other rocket currently being used. The biggest thing is it's fully reusable. So most rockets, orbital rockets today,
Yeah.
they will essentially like leave things behind, like as they stage, as they jettison like empty tanks, empty engines, they'll just fall back into the ocean and be lost. But this Starship is intended to be fully reusable, so everything that launches will be landing again.
Yeah.
And it's designed to go to Mars. Quite honestly, it's designed to carry lots of equipment and lots of people to Mars to start colonies. And it does. There's a dozen other things it can do. It's going to be used as a lunar lander.
Yeah.
It can be used. It can be used for point to point travel on the Earth. So imagine being able to get anywhere on the Earth in 30 minutes.
That's the crazy, and yeah, I don't hear people talking enough about this, and I think a lot of it has to do with, and we do not have to get into this, that SpaceX's CEO is controversial to some.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit, and rightfully or not rightfully, I don't know enough about it to know, but like nonetheless, the stuff that the engineers working for Elon are doing, like the actual SpaceX engineers, it's insane, and I don't hear enough people talking about it. Like you're saying,
they have dozens of problems that they're solving from scratch that no one's ever thought to try to solve before.
Exactly.
Like how do you launch a rocket full of fuel and then refuel an empty rocket in space?
Yeah, how do you do that?
They're working on figuring that out. Yeah.
I remember we were just hanging out, and you said they have fully reusable rockets that will land back on Earth, and then the rest of us were like, "Wait, what?" We were like, "Wait, that's just a thing they can do now," which is insane. Because you're right, like you said, it's literally like, okay, you want to go to Japan? 30 minutes maybe. Go up into space, land back somewhere in Japan. It's like, what? That's insane. And fully reusable, I mean, shoot. Like that's good for lack of space junk and all
Yeah, well, I mean,
viable.
the end goal is for that type of thing to become as common as getting on a plane and
Yeah.
flying somewhere else. Like that's the end goal of Starship is to basically completely disrupt the airline industry.
Shoot. I mean, I'd be down. I don't know if that'll be in our lifetime or not. It's that thing of like optimistically, of
Yeah.
course. I
I
think
mean,
electrical cars is more
that's
America's
that's
future.
exactly where I was wanting to go to. Like
Yeah,
speaking of disrupting industries,
yeah.
that's also something that I'm really interested in. I follow a lot of different
Mhm.
companies that do electric cars, and it is quite entertaining to watch the industry getting completely turned on its head
Yeah,
by a few small companies that a couple years ago everyone was laughing at, and
mhm,
now everyone's scrambling to catch up to them.
for
Um,
sure. I mean, what
and
we were talking about the other day, like, didn't the UK make some sort of like there won't be any cars that run on?
yeah, so both at this point, both the UK and California have banned the sale of combustion cars. The UK by 2030 and California by 2035.
Whew.
That combustion cars simply won't be able to be sold there. You can still drive them, you can still get them,
Yeah, yeah.
licensed and such, but you won't be able to sell them. And that won't completely, combustion cars won't go away in a day.
Oh
Obviously,
yeah,
they're going to be there for a very long time. Even manuals, even though are still made and driven occasionally.
yeah.
But combustion cars are going to very quickly, I think, go in that way. Like
Yeah.
very soon, we'll start seeing electric cars being the norm, and combustion
Combustion
cars.
cars will be more like a antique in a way, or like a
Right. Mm.
collectible.
Yeah, and it's estimated that by 2030, it's looking like 30 or 40% of all cars will be electric.
Wow. Wow.
And so definitely in our lifetime, we will see combustion cars become antiques. Quite
Yeah,
honestly,
that's
in
kind
their
of exciting
entirety.
in a way.
It's very exciting in a lot of different ways. And I
And
mean, it's
yeah.
finally getting to the point where not only people are wanting it,
Mhm.
people are driving these big auto manufacturers to make EVs,
Yeah.
both just by the markets and by just general audience. But also the technology, the engineering is finally there that we
Yeah,
can make them viable, affordable, and like the good cars.
for sure.
They're no longer $250,000 cars that are super fancy and can't do much. You can go and for 40 grand buy an electric car that can beat most $1 million supercars.
Yeah. And I'd like to see because for example, like I hear a lot of people talk about like how electric cars are cool and all, but we really need to focus on like public transport. And I do agree in a lot of ways. I think our train system could be better. I think we could really work on a lot of that. But also
Hmm.
like the thing with electric cars, which I think is the way of America. Like I think that's just the way at least the way United States will be going in terms of our travel.
Mm.
Um, I think there is plenty of room for really good public transport with that. Like imagine electric buses that drive
Oh
themselves.
yeah, for sure. And there are companies working on that
Yeah.
are making delivery vans or buses or such for electric
Yeah.
cars. However, we're not going to ever see a outstanding, well planned public transportation system like some European cities have, simply because America doesn't need that. It can't really support that. We have such a
We're very big.
in general, we're such a large country with such a low population density.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense economically
Yeah.
to have a public transportation system when nearly everyone in the country can afford to have one or two cars, but just own them outright.
Yeah, I guess I don't know necessarily enough to know if that's necessarily true, but I think like more so in the urban centers we can focus on like infrastructure for like public transport, in
Oh
that in
yeah,
like the
it
traditional way.
definitely can be improved.
Yeah,
I think, but
and
I think in general, this electrification of vehicles that we're seeing is not necessarily going to have anything to do with that. Like,
yeah,
yes, it may improve it a little bit, but I don't see public transportation becoming any better specifically from electric vehicles. I think it's going to take some other technologies,
to make that.
other cultural changes to make that feasible. Yeah.
I would agree because when I think about the electric cars, because like I'm a social science person and I'm a liberal arts student, so I immediately think
Mm.
of like, oh, how would this affect culturally and like the poor and like the people who maybe can't afford cars and only travel through public transport or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but in the grand scheme of things, like at least how our country is now, it's more going the way of like people will be buying electric cars and not combustion cars in the future. And
Yeah,
my hope
I
is
think so
that
too.
we'll get better public buses, maybe, or other things like that. They can travel state to state. I guess that all depends on whether or not states and the federal government puts money into making that. Um,
Right.
but I look forward to the day where like even old people, this is a good example, like old people who could not drive anymore can just get in their car, type in a destination, and the car will take them there. They don't have to worry about
Oh
their
yeah.
eyesight or anything
I
like
mean,
that.
the scary thing about the self-driving technology is the technology is basically here. I mean, there are several
Yeah.
cars that arguably, I say, have self-driving softwares that are as good as humans at driving. The
Mm.
problem is the legislation. The problem is the government and people's willingness to get in a self-driving car, and
Yeah.
that's what's gonna be decades still.
That's
It's still gonna be 2 or 3 decades before we start seeing self-driving cars in mass.
Yeah.
Even though we have them now.
That's what
Um,
that's what I'd like to see.
yeah, and something else I like. We touched a little bit on just like American culture. That's something that's really interesting to me, or recently is becoming very interesting to me.
Yeah.
I've been reading some books and thinking about a lot of things that it would be intriguing to have a conversation about that. I think our discussion here is about at an end, but we should
Yeah.
definitely do another episode at some point where we just talk about American culture in general, how it's changed, what it is now, and how much it's actually hidden from us. Because I think there's even America. I think there's some history that we don't really learn in public schools, and there's a reason why.
Oh, I mean, shoot, if we're just talking about like race stuff and like the poor, I mean, shoot, like luckily for us in AP US history, we learned about the what happened in World War II, the internment camps, right?
Mm-hmm.
How we just
Yeah.
straight up did that.
Yeah.
Like which not a lot of people actually learn in high school. We were fortunate enough to learn that. Or how we're taught, or maybe we're not taught specifically this, but it feels like the civil rights movement was so long ago, and it was like 60 years ago now, I guess, right? So 20
Well,
and 40.
that was when the larger like public parts of
Yeah.
it started. I would argue that it's never really stopped. But
Yeah. I mean, the current movement, the current boom in civil rights movement right now, or when George Floyd passed, was killed.
yeah,
That was big. But yeah, I agree. Like, there's a lot in American culture we don't recognize. And I think especially with sort of maybe both our interests with technology too, and how that has drastically changed. Like, I mean, shoot, like you were saying, we were talking about earlier, like electric cars or self-driving cars. Like, why is it that Americans just do not like the idea of having a car drive them? Because like in the end of the day, the car's going to be better at driving than they are, more than likely.
absolutely. And it's going to allow you to do whatever you want instead of driving 11 hours across the country. You can have the car drive for you. That's 11 hours of productivity you have.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's almost a no-brainer. Like obviously we want it to be safe. We want it to actually be better than we would be at driving, right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure it's at that point, but like yeah, I agree. That is a podcast in of itself of just talking about American culture. And I think if we really delve into American culture, I would try to I have a few history major people I know, or a few, grab them maybe. But
Oh, I actually have a history major friend I know at Rolla. Surprisingly, at an engineering school, history majors do exist. So
they do exist.
Yeah, maybe we could get a couple of guests and do an
Oof.
episode like that. I would enjoy that.
That would be a hefty episode. I'm sure with a lot of hopefully not. I think we're pretty good at constructive arguments. Hopefully, because I can imagine like a topic would brought up and there might be some.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there'd be disagreements, as is the nature. But I think that's part of the reason why I would be interested to have that, because we have different backgrounds from quite different point of views that we could bring those up and discuss them.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. I think this episode's listed on a really chill episode, and maybe that's because it's really early in the morning as opposed to not early. It's like what? 10,
It's not that
40
early,
now?
Matt.
Yeah,
it's almost 11 now.
But we're about to actually play Civ, and then after we play Civ, I'm going to be, I think, doing a session 0 for that. I scheduled the session 0 to be, I think it's like 7.5 hours after we start. Let me wait. What's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Yeah, 7.5 hours, which is well in the ballpark of how long our games usually last.
Yeah, it's usually like 5.5 to 6 hours.
Yeah,
that we take. So that should be fine.
So even if we have a war or two, we should be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we'll be doing. Thank you, Will, for coming on. I'm sure we'll have you on again. Right now, I'm just kind of making the rounds of getting some people on for their first episode for
Yeah,
these
fair enough.
first few, and then I'll go back around and be like, okay, have Will back on for the specific topic. Because right now she's
Right.
generally speaking to the other person,
Yeah, I
getting to
understand.
know them a bit.
Mhm.
Well, I already know them a bit, but like getting to know them, asking questions that maybe I haven't asked in a while, and B, for the audience, what little there is to get to know them as well.
Oh, the audience will slowly grow. I'm sure of it. I think this is a
Oh
cool
yeah,
channel, and
I think so too.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fun, the variety and stuff. But
Mhm.
nonetheless, this has been episode 8. I think it'll probably be called, I guess, Rockets and Scrambled Eggs, maybe? I don't know. Something. It'll be called
Something
something.
like that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you everyone for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.